All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And hello, all. It is history being made. Nice to have everybody with us today. Mark Thompson Show with Mark here, and Kim is on board.
Kim, how are you?
And how are you, Kim? Kim does that morning show.
It's been a stressful morning. I had some technical malfunctions.
Oh, technical issues, everybody. Come on. I'm just happy when anybody else has technical. Was Tony involved?
Thanks, Tony.
Or
Tony
not?
was not. This is. I can't blame Tony. This is.
Poor Tony.
You remember my keyboard when my eye malfunctioned?
Yes, I remember that.
Mm-hmm. And then it was the T that went out.
Sure.
And I could still find my way around. And then it was multiple letters. And so I got a wireless keyboard to kind of, get around that problem.
Oh, that's clever.
Today, the wireless keyboard would not connect to the computer, so I couldn't log on and do the show. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was pretty upset.
And did you try rebooting the whole house? Or did you not?
I did the rebooting.
You have to unplug the whole house for
I tried
like
new
10
batteries
seconds.
for the keyboard. I tried everything.
Yeah.
In the end...
they do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
In the end,
had an epic trip. It went sailing through the air and slammed into a bookcase.
Now that is a classic Mark Thompson Show finish, even though it wasn't on our show. I'm proud of you.
I'm not proud of myself.
Well,
no.
Yeah. I mean, you have to, at some point, you just have to end it. It's over.
Good day, sir.
Right. I'm done with this keyboard.
In that moment. It really felt good in that moment. And now I feel stupid. But hey, it was what it was.
Are you going to be able to acquit yourself and handle the things that you need to do on this show in a manner that you're going to make proud? I mean, I'd like a little, if I can say this about everybody on this show, I'd like a little pride of ownership. Okay. I really would. I find, I get it. It's not like a full-time thing. How about a little pride of ownership on this show? That's all I'm saying.
Are you saying I've turned in shoddy work? Are you?
No,
is that
no,
what
I'm
you're
not
saying?
saying that. I'm not saying that.
Just because of my Trump thumbnail last night, you're saying this is bad?
Just because of you? We always talk about the thumbnails, and she wanted a thumbnail with like this cartoonish thing of Trump, and I thought it was a little bit too much. Yeah. I don't like to troll Trump too much on the show. I like to sort of call the balls and strikes. Yeah. I think that when you troll too much, and obviously we have a point of view, I don't know. I think any objective reading of fact would suggest that the last president, Trump, tried to overthrow the election and then really take power by force. I mean, I think it's indisputable, but I'm happy to roll around the schoolyard with anybody who wants to argue it with me. That said, I just want to argue the facts. I don't really want to sit here. I don't ever make fun of Trump's hair, weight, skin. Right. I don't do that. I've never called him a name. So, and I get that I probably would have more subscribers if I did, but I just don't because it's just not our way. But that said, Kim had this kind of cartoonish thing of Trump last night. And I said, no, that's just not cool.
Can't do it.
No, can't do it. Thanks to everybody who
felt good in the moment, though.
Who jumps on board and helps. Yes, in the moment you feel good. Yeah. It's like when you tell your boss off. You know what I mean? And then you go, "What did I just do?" So, right out of I've got a great show for you today. Obviously, a historic indictment of a former president who, as I say, I think it's indisputable he tried to overthrow the last election. And clearly, in Georgia, they feel the same way, with the legal system prepared to charge, and they did charge 19 people, but prepared to go to trial. In fact, for the 19, Trump being one of them. And when Fani Willis was asked, you're really going to bring these all to trial at once? She said, yeah, I am. Which, of course, we're going to talk to David Katz in about 30 seconds. But it immediately struck me as, no, you're not. I mean, a bunch of people are going to plead this out, I guess is my point. And a bunch of other people are, going to make deals of some kind. So by the time you get to court, I would guess that the number of people who'll be on trial will be lower than what we're seeing, the 19. Let me put my Superman glasses on just to recognize Sausalito Steve. Patience has been rewarded. Sausalito Steve, thank you for throwing us a super sticker for $10.
Big shout out.
Scott Rittenberg. Georgia gave me a nice last-minute birthday present. Yes, it was Scott's birthday, I guess. And there you go, Scott.
Big shout out.
Big shout out. Birthday shout out, and thanks for the super sticker. The Lady Beatrice for $10 says, enough charges, enough injunctions. Probably indictments, maybe. Oh, maybe injunctions. Arrest this megalomaniac before he can run for office. I don't want to hear anything next unless it's a trial or an arrest. The Lady Beatrice has had enough, Kim.
Good day, sir.
Yes.
I understand. I mean, I'm with her.
Kim, get yourself a new keyboard, but not where Albert got his mic. Says Louise.
Big shout
out to Louise and William DeMitchell. Thank you for $10 today. Love getting started with a little support for the show. Really appreciate it. We're crowdfunded. Means a lot. Patreon and PayPal supporters, thank you too. And the Lady Beatrice Week says in the super chat, and we'll always read a super chat, we can't afford to wait for trial. If he wins election, it will be too late. Well, without any further delay, I will ask the Lady Beatrice, thank you for that.
Big shout out.
I want to ask David Katz about that. Because first I want David to lay it out as best he can, just to summarize it. But then, I know there are two ways, based on my reading, there are two ways that Trump could get out of this, potentially. Out of a Georgia case. And I want to talk to David about that. But right now, smash the like button like a boss if you would. Give us the thumbs up.
It with your iron rod.
Also have Jim Avila later this hour, who will join. And he's been watching how this has all been covered by right-wing media and by mainstream media, you might want to call them. And also, of course, the great David Cay Johnston, the Pulitzer Prize winner, joins us in the next hour. So there's much to do. And I'll mention, just as a palate cleanser between all of this and David Cay Johnston, we will talk to Jefferson Graham. It's Tech Tuesday, so we'll get to going on all that today.
The Mark Thompson Show.
He's the former federal prosecutor, now working the defense side of the table. You can hear him in London. You could hear him this morning in London talking about this case. He is on all these major news outlets internationally. I'm so proud that he could jump in with us for a quick second and set us straight on what's going on with this Trump indictment. How about it for David Katz, everybody?
Good morning, guys.
Good morning, sir. Thank you again. Tell us what's going on. This is like at the indictment buffet. I feel like Fani Willis pretty much loaded up her tray.
Well, I'm not going to tell your listener of a trial or an arrest of Trump, so sorry about that. This was, however, almost a 100-page indictment. It's very specific. It lays out over 100 overt acts. It says that Trump was the head of a racketeering conspiracy, which is something we hear about more in mafia cases from 30, 40 years ago. However, it should be noted it's used a lot in civil litigation, and a lot of civil plaintiffs call defendants racketeers, and no one likes to be called a racketeer, especially if you're a Fortune 500 company. And there's been talk about curtailing it, and obviously there's a value in calling Trump and his minions racketeers and a racketeering enterprise. For the Trump supporters and maybe for sort of a swing part of the country, this may be seen as a little bit of overcharging for various reasons, which we can get into. But it's extremely significant because in the case in New York, he's the sole defendant. In the Mar-a-Lago case, he's charged, but along with two, a valet and a handyman. And in Washington, D.C., in federal court, he's the only one charged, although there are 5 or 6 named co-conspirators, but not charged. I shouldn't say named. We figured out who they were. And we thought that Meadows not being one of them, that maybe Meadows, the former White House chief of staff during this critical period, during December 2020 and January 2021, might be one of the cooperators. Now people are saying, well, wait, that doesn't make any sense. Why would he be charged so prominently in this indictment if he were cooperating with with Jack Smith, the special counsel, in the Washington, D.C. case? The cases obviously have a great deal of overlap. In fact, as to Trump, you could say that this is sort of a subset in more detail of what he did in the 3 conspiracies in Washington, D.C. He was trying to not be not to leave office, even though he'd lost. He had various conspiracies to falsely certify, falsely count the vote, mischaracterize things. And he did it probably worse than anywhere else in Georgia, hoping that he could get the domino effect to start. He hoped if he could turn the Republican state of Georgia, where he had a Republican governor, Republican secretary of state, he thought if he could get those people to be pliable, if he could push them around and threaten them into changing the vote there, that he would go on to other states and basically tie up. What he was trying to do? He was trying to not have the vote certified by Pence on January 6th, get that delay. The military wouldn't have known what to do. Everybody would have frozen. There would have been either competing inaugurations or no inaugurations, and Trump would have just stayed on in power, even though he was the loser.
Yeah, exactly right. This same dance that he was doing in Georgia, he was prepared to do elsewhere, and had already sort of laid the groundwork for that. And that gets me to this RICO thing. When you talk about conspiracy, the dragnet legally that she has laid out is designed to show the network of people involved. Is that right, David? So to what extent they have to be a part of these things? Do they what determines their guilt or innocence? In other words, if they're hip deep in it, is that worse than if they were only sort of a small part of it?
Well, as a federal criminal defense attorney, Mark, I have so many criticisms of how she proceeded, except I do think that Trump is the exception, and his minions, his cronies, who deserve this treatment. But generally speaking, this is her 11th RICO case. Some of them were against teachers who supposedly certified people had passed on to the next grade level and they hadn't. I mean, it's so ripe for abuse. So I'm not defending Trump on this. I'm saying I think Trump is the exceptional person who probably deserved this, given the depth of what he did and the corruptness of it. But some of the problems with it are you only have to prove what are called two predicate acts. So you can lay out 150 overt acts that the prosecutor can aim at, and yet you, as an individual defendant, only have to be convicted of two predicate acts. And they can be sort of normal mail fraud, wire fraud, having somebody file a certificate. So in that sense, the proof is extremely easy. The other thing that I don't like about the cases is that there's a mandatory minimum. For progressive prosecutors who don't like mandatory minimums and who complain about all these poor folks who are sitting in jail with a mandatory minimum that they had to receive 5-10 years in prison. Well, there's a mandatory minimum. And she bragged at the press conference last night that you can't get probation on any of them. So it's jail time, she said. And of course, the threat when you do that, and we've criticized this in other contexts, is that a lot of people who are not guilty are going to think, what, on the one hand, I could go home to my wife and kids and my life. On the other hand, I could be serving 5 years in prison if I assert my constitutional rights. If I say I'm not guilty, which I have a right to say, if I go to trial, if the dice don't come up my way, 5 years in prison, I don't care what's behind door B. I don't really care whether I'm guilty. I'm innocent if I have a defense. What's behind door B? And it's 5 years in prison. And so what she hopes here, of course, is that she's going to get some of those 19 to flip. When she says that she's going to try them all within 6 months, all 19 of them. I had a judge say one time when I said, I want a severance. He said, you know what? Your co-defendants will sever this case for you, meaning that so many will plead guilty. You won't end up with 19. You'll end up with at most 5 or 6. And just one parenthetical, I tried a case down in the San Diego federal court. My client was acquitted in the case. I mentioned this case to you sometimes, where we had 6 defendants on trial. And even 6 was very unwieldy, where there were a lot of different promotions and different parts of the conspiracy. It was 4.5 months in trial. Think about some of those 19 people. They really cannot afford a lawyer to spend months and months in trial. Again, Trump can, Giuliani can, but just looking at the overall scope of it. So yes, she has made it incredibly difficult on all of those defendants, including some that in my judgment deserve to have it made awfully difficult on them. But for all 19, they have to go hire a lawyer. They have to have this enormous stress. Whether they have to be there in the courtroom is another issue. I don't think Trump needs to be there in the courtroom. I'd love to talk about that, how he accommodates his schedule and now 4 different cases going to trial.
Okay, I want to get to that in a second. And then I want to quickly And to let our audience know, I will address with David the two ways that I've read that Trump actually could escape justice in Georgia completely. But I'll get to that. I'll get to the two. But I also want to indicate we have a poll up. And the poll will be something that you're interested in, David Katz, because you're so good on this stuff. The poll is, will Donald Trump ever go to prison? Period. I think that's what, isn't that what it says, Tony? So I believe that's what the wording on it. And so in our poll, apparently, and I'm getting this only because of the feedback I'm getting. Tony, can you tell us where people are pretty much feeling as though Trump will not go to prison? Isn't that correct?
Yeah, it's 64 to 8. Wrote, will Trump do any prison time?
Will Trump do any prison time? For anything, okay? It can be for anything. It could be in Georgia, anywhere. Will Trump do any prison time?
And
you've always maintained,
no.
David. So it's 60-40 no, and I think people have responded to some of the comments you've made along the way, the pre-indictment, I might add, in Georgia, that he wouldn't do any prison time. So this speaks to the schedule and how he's handled and the election and all the rest. So now to the schedule. So please vote. You can vote in the chat on that. And what happens, David? How does the legal docket get handled with this Georgia information now entering things in the last day?
Well, I hope this isn't getting a far afield, but I think it's important to understand this. You know, it all starts with this case in New York City. That one came first. And that one, it can be, I think, credibly argued, should have come about a year and a half or 2 years earlier. Remember, there were two special prosecutors on that case. One was a very competent lawyer from a big law firm who basically made that his project to put this case together against Trump. It was a lot more than hiding with Michael Cohen or generating documents with Michael Cohen or with people from the Trump organization that made it look like they hadn't paid hush money to this porn star when they had. But there was so much more to that case. It was Trump's taxes. It was Trump's other misconduct. It was all kinds of other illegality. They didn't go on that case. Those two prosecutors both resigned. One of them wrote a book. And then it ended up being sort of one of those things, well, my goodness, after all those years, this is what we ended up with. That case is going to go to trial, supposedly, I think, around March of 2024. Everybody keep your
is the order that they're brought in, the indictments, does that have any effect on the order that they'll actually? No, okay.
The trial judge can change everything. They can change the trial date. They couldn't drastically move it up. The defendant would say, I'm not prepared, but they could certainly push it back. Then the second one was the one down in the Southern District of Florida, which, you know, it was not one that anybody sat on. It was one that he committed that crime, you know, as he left the White House and after he left the White House and after they served the subpoena. And of course, the devastating fact for him there is that after he had his attorney certify that there were no top secret documents there, they came in on a search warrant approved by a federal magistrate judge, and they found just what he and his lawyers said were not there anymore. So that's a devastating piece of evidence. But I've said already, I think that it was an unforced error to bring that case down in the Southern District of Florida with a 1 in 3 chance of getting that very Trump-friendly judge. And so I don't see with the national security issues that there's any way that that case goes to trial. And so if Trump or one of his allies gets into power in 2024, that case will be kiboshed. That case will not go anywhere. He will not go to prison in that case. I don't think he's going to go to prison in the New York City case that we just talked about, because it's kind of roll your eyes offense. Whether that's right or it's wrong, you need to have everything go the prosecutor's way, even to bump it up to a felony. He's sure not going to jail on a misdemeanor. Then you get to the Washington, D.C. case, which largely overlaps with this case. But as I said, this is an intense, this is intense in one state, whereas the others were generalized over various states. And there was a lot of the conduct that just got charged last night that happened in these other states, but this is very specific to Georgia. And so I think there's a real issue in that case. I'm not trying to, sound like Jim Avila is going to say, this is what I've been hearing on the right-wing stations. But there is a real issue. Why did Merrick Garland take over 2 years, right, to appoint a special prosecutor? And you see all of these 4 cases end up to have been delayed or handled, not so much the Mar-a-Lago case, but certainly these other 3 cases. There is an argument that Trump is going to make over and over again that this was all scheduled by Democrats so that it would go during the year and 3 months that he was running for president against Biden. This was all held up. Why did the special counsel not get appointed? And then they get a real go-go special prosecutor. So from a Machiavellian point of view, you think, okay, I get it. He sits on it for over 2 years with evidence that's basically known from January 2021. He sits on it for all that time. He appoints a real go-getter special counsel. easy to guess that that guy will get his act together much faster, charge this case in 9 months, and lo and behold, you'll have a Democratic appointed judge in very democratic Washington, D.C., lecture the Trump side. I'm seeing you as a criminal defendant. I'm not seeing you as a presidential candidate. The shoe on the other foot, Idaho, Texas, you name it, Alabama, got together, charged Joe Biden with a bunch of stuff, and he was being lectured by judges. I don't see you, Mr. President, as a presidential candidate in 2024. I see you as a criminal defendant, and I'm going to make this order and that order, and don't abuse the discovery, and do this and do that. I don't see it that way. I think it's so different because of the things that Trump did, and that he deserves the prosecutions, each one of them that he's gotten, but that's going to be his narrative.
Wow, that's terrific. And, I must say in the comments after we went off the air yesterday, and I look at the comments because most people watch the show in delay, I was taken to task because I felt that we were talking about the fact that somebody said, what about the cluster? This is sort of a cluster of cases that was dropped on Trump. Doesn't that feel like it was a political act? And I said, well, first of all, I don't feel as though they didn't use the word cluster. I used the word cluster. They said the timing, it all happened at the same time. I said, well, it's a cluster, but it's not all dropping at the same time. But you actually make a pretty, compelling argument for the notion that, well, it was clearly slow-walked. I mean, the timing on this case. I thought it was because they wanted it to go away. But you suggest, without actually making the argument, you suggest that the argument can be made effectively, that it was political. Now I want to ask you about this federal law called the removal statute. If a state indicts a federal official, that federal official can request the transfer of this case to a federal court. So you go away from the whole Georgia state thing. There's no way he can pardon himself. If you actually could change the venue to a federal court, he tried this in the Manhattan case, I think. Can you speak to that?
Well, I think that this case has a nucleus of action that's in the state. It's hard for people to remember sometimes that while we have federal elections, they're conducted by the state. So including the presidential election. So this was very much state business to run this election. If the state didn't run the election fairly, the answer was not for the federal government to intercede. It was for people on the aggrieved party side to go into the state courts and ask the state court for relief. They tried that, but they lost in every state court. They also lost in federal court. The Trump side did. So I think that a federal judge will not allow this case to be removed. I think it will be kept in the state court. But of course, the leapfrog is that first you remove it to the federal court, then it becomes a federal conviction, then it's something that can be pardoned later on. I want to say something that is very short and very scary. I think that Trump has said to his other co-defendants, by the way he communicates, Truth Social, his people put out the word, kind of a let's hang together or we will surely hang separately. And I think that they have a strong motivation. I know they want to get out of the 5-year mandatory minimum sentence. Would that really be imposed? Would some judge be willing to say in state court that for some lower down person to get 5 years as a mandatory minimum, with the judge saying, this person is sick, this person was minimally involved, this person has all the reasons in the world for mitigation and for a lower sentence, and it's unconstitutional. It's cruel and unusual punishment to impose 5 years on that person. They have that hope. But don't bet so much on your constitutional argument. I think the argument that they're getting from Trump is that, look, if I get back into office, and I don't mean to scare people, but I think we know Trump and we know the kind of way that he thinks and the incredibly vindictive way he is. He said, look, if I get back into office, I'll not only get rid of the 2 federal cases, but I will make war on Georgia and all the people who tried to get me in state court down there. And it's not a happy prospect to have war made on you by the president of the United States if you're a state DA somewhere. And I know she's got all the protection, all the sheriffs. She's got the right not to be indicted wrongly for something. But, I don't know, he puts one of the people, you can imagine one of the people that Trump might put in as attorney general. And before you know it, he indicts a bunch of people, right?
Sure. You're right about it being both scary and plausible, given who he is.
And the other 18 people in this case might say, you know what? Let's just see how I'm not going to start my 5 years. I'm not going to start my 5 years before January 2025. Let's see how it all plays. So I don't think we're going to have a massive number of flips in that case. I think as long as Trump has this huge power and has the prospect of being nominated and maybe being the next president, I think a lot of people will hold their tongues. And the case, there's no way it gets to trial in 6 months. And one last thing, they may take one or two people who are very have a lot of who are not very guilty. And I don't know exactly the case on Jeffrey Clark. He might be a candidate. One of the people you don't really know about who did.
He was the guy that Trump wanted to make attorney general. Isn't that right?
Right. And they'll say, I want to go to trial. Jeffrey Clark will say, look, I know this case is going to take a year to go to trial, and I don't want to wait a year. I want to clear my reputation. I have a right to a speedy trial. I want my case severed, and take one of the weakest people to trial first and let the whole nation watch that, maybe televised, to watch the weakest case go to trial first. Don't count that out as a strategy by the defense team.
Oh, that's really interesting. Really interesting. Well, I'm out of time. I got Jim Avila waiting, but I just wonder if you can just comment. The Georgia legislature passed a law. I think it goes into effect in 8 weeks that allows them to replace, I believe, any district attorney in the state. So when we come back, you can comment on it now, but I'd certainly like to comment on Thursday whether you think that's a possibility that Kemp, who is I think he's a GOP loyalist in the state of Georgia, might he not just replace the district attorney and we're done?
If she plays her cards right, I don't think that will happen. I think it's too controversial, and it's very easy for someone like Governor Kemp, who's resisted these blandishments and threats from Trump before, to say, look, this is due process. Everyone's presumed innocent. Everyone has a right to a trial. Let's have the case go to trial with this district attorney. I'm not going to remove her. That would seem to be a political earthquake that Kemp doesn't really need. And the moderates in the Georgia legislature, they don't really need that one. And the trial's not going to trial against Trump anytime soon. It's just not with 19 defendants, especially if a lot of them don't flip.
He is David Katz. He'll join us normally on Thursday, so appreciate him being here today. I'll tell you what, I'll call the comments and also emails, and we'll have questions for you on Thursday. Thanks, David Katz. Appreciate it.
Pleasure to be with you, Mark.
So long, David.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, I'm running a little behind, so I'll get right to him. He is the award-winning journalist, former senior correspondent at ABC News. Now he writes a column on media and politics. I'm so curious to see how this entire thing is being played out in the media. How about it for Jim Avila, everybody? Hi, Jim.
Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, sir. How is this being played out across media?
Well, I wouldn't argue with David Katz on anything legally. I mean, he has the credentials. Politically, I think he stated some things which he did see on Fox News, but as he's pointed out, politically, I think I have some credentials to take him to task on a couple of things, and you as well.
Start there. Go ahead.
So the first thing is, I don't think Merrick Garland and Joe Biden delayed this on purpose so it would happen now. I think their real motives were genuine and good for the country. Joe Biden promised to come in and return us to normal and get us back on track. And that's what he did. He didn't want the first thing he did when he comes into office is to have his attorney general go after his predecessor legally. And so they didn't run and jump into it. They took their time. And so now it's all coming together. It takes time to build these cases, and Katz knows it's better than I. So, it's not unusual for 2 years on a huge case like this, especially a white-collar crime, for this to play out in this way. So, that this is some big conspiracy to keep him out of elections. That's not true. What the conspiracy is that Donald Trump announced his candidacy 6 months before he did the last time, and 6 months before most people do. Why? Because he wanted to be a candidate when he knew these indictments were coming down. He's the one who brought this on this way, not everybody else.
I think that's a fair point. I think that's indisputable. I mean, that he came out early because he wanted to make that argument that it's all political.
Right.
Yes, of course. And for fundraising purposes, too. But I think it was point A that was most prominent. So, Jim, how does it play all of this as you watched media across the board last night? I mean, politics and media is your thing now, and I'm curious what they were saying on Fox, for example, and right-wing media, et cetera.
Well, Fox was saying pretty much what you'd expect, but what I was surprised about Fox is one of the great things about this being in state court is that we saw the process. I've seen this before because I'm a reporter and I'm there. But yesterday, when we're waiting for the grand jury, and then the grand jury puts out their bill of particulars, which charges Donald Trump, we were there live with a camera behind the clerk as the paperwork was brought down to her, and she stamps it. We're watching the process. We're watching how the U.S. government is supposed to work. This is how the state government is supposed to work. And we saw the glorious process. And we see her walk the paperwork up to the judge. The judge doesn't even barely skims it, signs his name. And then it goes on, and then a few hours later, it's on the docket, and we can all see it. But what was interesting was that Fox carried all that, which I was kind of surprised at, because it was a bit of a process. And MSNBC carried it, and CNN carried much of it as well. And Fox was in the courtroom, and if the judge would have read what he was going to, what he could have read if he wanted to out loud, Fox would have carried it. So kudos to them for that news coverage. I think that was good. Then they had on, if you're interested in what they did, they then had on, of course, a Trump lawyer. And the Trump lawyer, which was interesting to me, was complaining that that we're talking about this indictment. We know that there's an indictment, but we don't know what's in the indictment. And she didn't know what was in the indictment yet. And that was a complaint, because she was saying there's some kind of mystery here. There's no mystery. It's the regular process. We just saw it. But they were complaining that that they were being blindsided, and it's not like he was being hauled into jail yesterday. They now have the district attorney has given her 2 weeks to before he has to be arrested and brought in. And that's one of the little minor comment I wanted to have, not on Katz, but on one or two of your viewers. He has been arrested. He is under arrest right now. He is out on bail. What you mean is you want to see him in jail. Well, that's a different process, and that could happen. And I think one of the things that I want to bring out, and then I'll let you ask another question, Mark, is I'm not so sure that this is not what Donald Trump wants. This is not part of his plan. That he's going to test right up to the edge some judge throwing him in jail for either tampering with a witness, or threatening a witness, or threatening them, or threatening the prosecutors. He is stupid enough and also cleverly criminal enough to try to go to jail to win the presidency in some way, to get it put in jail, to cause a civil war, to cause all the issues. I think it was wise of the DC judge to take a breath. I mean, she could have, after that tweet about him, if you go after me, I'll go after you. She could have handed down some sanctions there, but she took a breath and giving him kind of a little room, not trying to stir up the pot. I thought that was wise. That was judicial. That was a judicial way to do things.
You make points that I think I can't really argue when you talk about Trump. I think he sort of has a history of throwing everything against the wall to see what sticks. He doesn't certainly care about tearing down any institutions, and he's when it comes to self-preservation, I think he is going to burn the place down type thing.
Yeah.
So I can't argue with that. What I would argue, and this is my frustration, frankly, is, and yet I understand it. And I think this is what Katz kind of alludes to occasionally, and what we speak of on the show, I think a lot, particularly from me. The institutions are such that you can't just imprison a former president too quickly. And so as a result, he has a way, way, way more running room than you or I would have. And he is free to throw these rhetorical Molotov cocktails and probably do it without any kind of repercussion for a while, Jim. I don't really know how an imprisonment of Donald Trump would go down in terms of what would ensue, which I'm suggesting violence and the kinds of his crowd is a rough crowd.
Yeah, I think I think that's certainly a possibility, and I think that's why the judges are being careful. I think you're right. I think when those who complain that Donald Trump is not being treated like everybody else, they are absolutely right. Everybody else would already be in jail for what he's done. He is the president. He is a former president of the United States. We must be careful. Yes, we must hold him account, but we can't rush into any of these things. And I think that's what these judges are doing, and I think that's what the Department of Justice was doing. Jack Smith is going to have an airtight case when he gets to court, and he's being very careful about that. The other thing that I wanted to bring out, and this is more along the media lines, is my disappointment in the major networks yesterday. Those of us here on the West Coast had to watch cable to see what was happening. Because it didn't happen just before East Coast time, where the networks, except for NBC, which didn't update their broadcasts. So here on the West Coast, if you happen to be not watching cables or watching the internet, you didn't know that he had been indicted again, and that there were and that we were awaiting charges. They waited to do a special report until the charges came out about 2 hours later. So
literally their show was absent of the indictments?
It was what was going on at 3:30 in the afternoon Pacific time. And that was, that's when it's recorded, the initial broadcast. Normally when there's a big event, they update. And it didn't even have to be that big of an event. When I was reporting for ABC News and for NBC before that, if I was covering a flood in the Midwest and some development happened between 3:30 Pacific time and 6:30 Pacific time when the newscast goes on, I had to redo my piece to the exact time, so that they could plug it in and get the new development in. Here's an indictment of the former president of the United States, and they don't tell people on the Pacific Coast of what's going on. That was just that was bad. It was really really bad. And your viewer points out that ABC did preempt The Bachelor for the indictments. Yes, when they announced the indictments, all of them broke in again, which was the right thing to do. But during the newscast, they didn't, which was rare. And I don't know what was going on, because it wasn't like David Muir wasn't still there. He was there
because he was there for the update
at 9:30. Yeah,
right.
So when I used to anchor the news when I used to anchor the weekend news on ABC, I couldn't go home. I was done at like 7 o'clock, right? But I couldn't go home. I had to go in my office and hang around until 9:30 in case there was some development that I had to update the West Coast on. I don't know what they're doing. I didn't know what they were doing.
Usually there's somebody, even if Muir, but you're right, Muir was there. I was going to say, usually there's somebody there in the bureau.
There's always somebody in the office, always somebody there. So I don't know what their reasoning was. And, it was very disappointing.
The nerve of them preempting NCIS, says Mackay. Yeah, I mean, it's true, and but in another sense, that really speaks to the moment, and how significant it is. Jim, we'll post a link to your latest column. Like that you talk about media and politics here, and of course, we'll wrap up the week, and it's an eventful one indeed when we talk to you on Friday. Jim Avila, everybody.
Have a good day.
Right on. Good day, sir. Good day.
The Mark Thompson Show.
We're click-clacking along. Tony, why do I look so pasty white? I have this. Is that because I am pasty white? Is that what you want to tell me?
Go ahead. I'm guessing, but I'd say just a little more sun coming in that back window today is what I'm guessing.
I wish I had your beautiful Mediterranean skin. I love that melanin that gives you the beautiful dark. You just walk to the car, and whatever sun is out is enough to give you a nice bronze finish.
Because my mom is French Canadian, so during the winter I go completely white, and then summer hits and it just goes flat.
I absolutely love it. Absolutely love
Thanks,
it.
Tony.
Yeah. How about it? Smash the like button like a boss for a couple of people who've been so great weighing in on what's going on. I'm talking about Jim Avila, of course, on politics and media, and of course the amazing David Katz, who is all over the world with commentary, and he gave us a few minutes on these indictments. Now a palate cleanser, but before that, I want to remind you that David Cay Johnston, the Pulitzer Prize winner, Trumpologist, has written 3 books about Donald Trump and has lectured around the world on the law and government, and has 4 times been a bestseller with books about taxes and about how government works for the rich and the wealthy. And isn't that part of what this case will be all about, too? We'll talk to David Cay Johnston right after the top of the hour. But right now, as they say, palate cleanser and Tech Tuesday.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Tech Tuesday, welcome him in. He is from Photo Walks TV, the longtime writer of technology for USA Today. Now he's out on his own. Jefferson Graham.
Hi.
Hello, sir. Thank you for joining us. A lot going on in this world of technology. I loved some of your stuff. You've just gotten off the road, that long road trip that you took, and such insanely beautiful pictures. And you took them all, at least I always look to see how you got that shot. Yeah, you take them all with a smartphone.
Yes, I do. It's amazing what you could do. I think you're giving me a little lead in to plug my latest YouTube video, which is about how to photograph the Milky Way in the night skies with one of these. You could do it. It takes a little bit of work. I show you how in the latest video, and I would be the happiest guy in the world if all the Mark Thompson viewers after today's show, maybe after Kim's show too, would check it out and take a look. So it's
I mean, well, you have one picture up there that I really like that sort of does speak to the night sky and how you can effectively get it. And of course, during the Perseid meteor shower. I don't know that exactly. It's a little tough to see it now, but that's the picture I was talking about. Thank you, Tony. That's exactly the one I'm talking about. I mean, look how spectacular that is. So thank you. So you can find that all at Photo Walks TV. And Jeff, I want to ask you about the tech, because that is really why you're here.
Yes.
There is something that's happening during the heat of the summer, and it is associated with, I guess, these phones, these smartphones. They get hot so quickly, like faster than you're even thinking, and all of a sudden it just goes into inoperative mode.
Yeah, well, those of us in the San Francisco and Los Angeles area really don't have that much experience with it. When I was out on the road, when I was in Moab, Utah, and I was using my phone to operate my drone, the phone just said, no, you have to rest this phone because it's too hot, because I was in 100-degree weather. And so I said, okay, fine. And I rested it. And apparently I'm not the only one suffering from this issue. A lot of people have been suffering through it for this record summer heat. So 2 things to keep in mind. One is that Apple recommends that you don't use the fast charger during a time like this. You just do a regular charger. This is not it, but you know the little white thing that you have that you would plug in. They suggest that you use that instead. And then also that when you're in one of those situations, you take your case off, that the case can make it actually hotter.
No, that's really good. That's excellent. Never would have thought. I actually thought the case would keep it from heating up as much, oddly. I don't know why I thought that. Maybe that the sun wouldn't get through the case or whatever. At the same time, Google, through all of this, is sending out emails telling people to use their Google services or lose them. Is it really possible? Will they yank Google from you?
No, what they'll yank is your sign-in and your YouTube ID and your Blogger ID. Remember that one? That's from another time. Basically, we all sign up for a zillion emails. At least I have in my life. I don't know about you, Mark. I think you have a few of them. And if you haven't used one of them in the last 2 years, they'll be going away. They'll be going away by the end of the year. They said all you have to do, log on to your email, or watch a YouTube video, or share a photo, do anything with that ID, and they'll let you keep it.
Oh, wow. So that's pretty simple. It's like the flight miles that they're going to take away unless you take a flight. And so people, literally just, jump on a commuter flight from, San Francisco to, LA or something. Interesting, though. Okay, so now Amazon is getting rid of some of their house brands.
Yeah.
Are there any house brands on Amazon that we know of, that we've heard of, that we need? I mean, how big a deal is this?
It was really done for antitrust issues, for clearing the deck. And it's clothing that you've never heard of. It's not the stuff that we actually care about, which is Amazon Basics. Amazon Basics is where they do knockoffs of other things. And the prices are unbelievable, because I did check this morning. For instance, if you bought 16 rechargeable AA batteries from Amazon Basics, it's $18.47. The brand that I usually use, it's $47. So that's a big difference.
Wow.
A staple, you know, a little stapler, $6 on Amazon Basics versus $15 for a regular price. So so far, we still have those products, and I think those are the ones that most of your viewers and listeners really care about.
And those antitrust moves do speak to the fact that Amazon has this history of busting down prices below even producer levels, meaning they are discounted below the price it costs to produce them. And the idea is we drive the other ones out of business who compete with us, and now we can sell that Amazon brand and we just bring the price back up.
Right. So it's great for consumers. It's terrible for the business. And in the end, it's terrible for consumers too, because they're going to get screwed one way or the other. And I mean, every time you buy something on Amazon, you're hurting Main Street, right? You're hurting the retailer. Think about when you go to a retailer now and say, do you have such and such in stock? And they say, no, but I can order it for you. That's because years ago they would have had it. And because we're all going to Amazon. So it's this terrible, wonderful thing that we all have to live with.
It's funny because I will tell you that I buy a lot of stuff that's not on Amazon. But returning a lot of stuff that's not on Amazon is a pain in the ass. The return simplicity, it's frictionless return that really keeps me coming back to Amazon. You know what I mean?
Well, it's that, and in my case, I order cables and I order little parts and things like that for camera stuff, and I just click a button at 3 p.m. and it's there the next morning. And I haven't had to jump in the car, and you're not going to find it. That's the other thing. At least with Amazon, you're going to get it. Yeah.
Do retailers order from Amazon, then jack up the prices in their store, says Mackay. I've never heard of that. It's a wild idea, though.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Oh, I'm sure there's lots of stores that do that.
Oh, really?
Sure. Yeah, particularly in rural areas. I mean, that little case I just gave you about the batteries for $6 versus $47, or $16 versus $47.
That's true. Sure. Yeah. And Randy says, I believe if you buy Google storage, none of the use it or lose it policies apply. If you're in the Google storage world, Jeff, are you probably free of all the Google cancellation threats?
You are free. It's Google IDs. It's not Google services. It's not like, if you didn't watch a YouTube video this week, you can never watch YouTube again. It's not one of those. It's I have this crazy ID. I love Mark Thompson .gmail.com, and I haven't looked at it in 2 years. And in that case, they're going to take it away from me and give it to somebody else.
Finally, Perry Joe Jim Bob says, I dropped Amazon for Walmart Plus. Better overall with customer service and free Star Trek, everybody. That's a great added perk. Jeff, you should know about that. Free Star Trek on that Walmart Plus.
Okay, I'll have to remember that.
Photo Walks TV is his YouTube series. I love it. I recommend it. And you can find his writings, which oftentimes have some nuggets that I'll read about. And I'll go, hey, man, I'd like for you to mention this on the show. Like with the Taylor Swift thing comes to mind. Like I love that you showed that first up in your Substack. It's jeffersongraham.substack.com. He joins us on Tuesdays. He is the great Jefferson Graham. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Love it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Oh, yeah, everybody. We are click-clacking. I didn't think it possible. We're clacking and clicking. We're clicking and clacking. What happened to click and clack? Those, weren't they the car guys on NPR? One of them passed away, right? Was it click or clack? Click?
I'll look it up right now, but yeah, I believe so.
I believe one of the guys,
Google it.
yeah, Click or Clack, passed away. The
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, well, I think it happened a couple of years ago, so you don't have to maybe take the edge off your morning. M-O-U-R.
Yeah.
Morning.
No, not that morning.
No.
M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G. Smash the like button for
Smash it
what has been a
with your
great hour.
iron
We'll take a
rod.
break with Kim's News. Then the magnificent Pulitzer Prize winner, David Cay Johnston, will join us. Looking forward to a spirited second hour. By the way, Tony, where is the polling showing up on whether Donald Trump will go? Remind us what the poll is again, please.
Oh, I just closed it, and it was 64-35 no. That will Trump do any prison time?
64% of the audience that voted says no, he will never do any prison time. So,
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, I think that's I think we all sort of feel as though he's got the system gamed, and it's a very gameable system. I mean,
I don't know. When they trotted out the RICO charges, I thought, orange jumpsuit, here you come.
You can put me, I don't think he'll do any time. So, but we shall see, and we will ask the magnificent David Cay Johnston, who will join us in minutes. All right, Kim's News, and then David Cay Johnston next. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked. On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report sponsored by Coachella Valley Coffee. More on that in just a moment.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, let's talk about it. Former President Trump and 18 others are facing criminal conspiracy charges in Georgia related to the state's 2020 election. The Fulton County District Attorney, Fani Willis, said Trump has until noon Eastern Time next Friday to voluntarily surrender after being indicted. The Trump campaign calling the charges un-American, and the former president says he expects to fully be exonerated. Meanwhile, Trump says he plans to release a detailed report showing fraud occurred during the 2020 election in Georgia. And he will do so at a news conference next week in Bedminster, New Jersey.
Sure.
He says this report will exonerate him from his recent indictment in the state. It'll be interesting to see what's in that report.
Well, considering they couldn't come up with a detailed report that proved that there was some kind of fraud in the voting, that was the problem, right? That's how we ended up here. So now you have 6 days to come up with something. I wonder if he'll come up with that and his health care plan, which remember, there's a great one coming. We're working on it. We're going to release it in a special annountment next week. He's got a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
the infrastructure plan. Yeah,
the big announcement. What about the big announcement? The groundbreaking, big, earth-shattering announcement that never came to fruition.
Yeah,
big announcement always. So we get the big announcement on Tuesday in Trump's detailed report. Okay. Former President Trump says, his Mar-a-Lago property manager is pleading not guilty now to multiple charges related to Trump's alleged mishandling of classified documents. Carlos de Oliveira today, through an attorney, requested a trial by jury. An attorney said the discovery phase should start in the coming weeks. Trump was already arraigned in that case and has also pleaded not guilty. The identities of jurors who determined the fate of the Pittsburgh Tree of Life shooter, Robert Bowers, they've been permanently sealed, their identities. Bowers was convicted on charges stemming from the deadly October 2018 mass shooting, and the jury later voted to impose the death penalty. Well, now the judge has ordered the jury information permanently sealed during the trial though the order doing so had remained sealed until recently. So it stays sealed. The recovery efforts continue in Hawaii with at least 99 now confirmed dead and hundreds still missing from these wildfires. These wind-driven flames that destroyed the town of Lahaina on the island of Maui, now considered the deadliest wildfire in modern U.S. history, and the damages are estimated at more than $5.5 billion. Officials still warn that death toll will go up. President Biden is hosting the Prime Minister of Japan and the President of South Korea at Camp David on Friday. Secretary of State Antony Blinken saying the leaders are set to discuss a shared vision of free and open Indo-Pacific region. The meeting comes amid growing concern over North Korea and China. The big news out of San Jose today, a planned city worker walkout is now on hold thanks to a tentative deal with the city. Both unions involved say they have reached tentative deals that include historic investments in recruiting and retaining staff members, and the 14.5% to 15% raise doesn't help, or it doesn't hurt rather, along with 8 weeks in paid family leave. So,
well, they really, I think, believed that, a 3-day strike clearly was going to. We talked about it last week. Mm-hmm. It was going to freeze the city in a scary way. They saw what happened in Los Angeles with just a 1-day strike. So I think there was the threat of it was such an effective strategy. And clearly it was. They got what they wanted.
Got what they wanted and then some. Staten Island officials revisiting a plan to set up a tent city for migrants at Fort Wadsworth. The borough president, Vito Fossella, is asking the New York congressional delegation to request that the federal government put migrants at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. before any other federal sites like former military bases on Staten Island are used. Local officials argue Staten Island would be a poor choice given its landmark status and the huge number of visitors it draws. It seems as if nobody wants the migrants.
Yeah, I mean that's and the political brinksmanship and the whole political undertow that really informs a lot of this, a lot of these announcements, a lot of these strategies, a lot of these proclamations. I think it so confuses it, and it's kind of sad. We definitely have an immigration problem, as does most of the developed world. But, this kind of, we should put them on the National Mall. We should put them on the White House lawn. I mean, this doesn't really, it only feeds the politics of it. It only shows the shallow, one-dimensional politics of this problem instead of really attacking the issue of immigration.
Yes. What about lift your lamp beside the golden door? Did we forget that part?
Yeah, we definitely have a problem with, immigration and the flow of immigrants into this country. As I say, a lot of the developed world has it. But the idea somehow that, we should, again, when somebody says, I want that they should be put on the, in front of the Smithsonian in Washington, why don't we set up an encampment on the ellipse in Washington, D.C.? These are comments designed just to, it's political fodder. That's not an immigration strategy.
The majority of Americans say they have been impacted in some way by the country's substance abuse crisis. There's a new KFF tracking poll that finds 2 in 3 people say either they themselves or a family member have experienced addiction to alcohol or drugs, and 70% said it affected their mental health. 57% said their family's financial situation became an issue. In the Bay Area, 6 teens and young adults are now facing charges in connection with burglarizing a San Francisco store. Police announcing this week they had 6 people, ranging in age from 13 to 20 in custody for this incident last Thursday. The 6 accused of busting into a business on Fillmore Street in the early evening hours and filling large bags with merchandise before fleeing the store. Aged 13 to 20. Similar large-scale robberies have been reported all over California in recent weeks.
There's a party aspect to this, these mob smash and grabs. There's a party element. It's a weird thing. Maybe party's the wrong word, but you see how a 13-year-old, come on, let's go. It's going to be, it becomes an awful sort of, it's an endeavor that essentially, brings kids who, just think, oh, great, we'll just follow the rest of these guys and we'll go make some money. And I think it's a sad fact that, if you will, it's sort of being swayed by social decision making. It's like everybody else is doing it, so why not? I think. I mean, I don't think there's a gang leader who's 13 years old.
Well, perhaps the ringleaders of the theft ring know that 13-year-olds are not likely to face the same type of consequences.
Oh, that's certainly true. There are a lot of teenagers being used, and even the DA in San Francisco and throughout the Bay Area, they have looked at trying to attack these crime rings, and they are crime rings. These are not one-offs often. And they've looked at how to get to the kingpins, and there are several moves before you get to the kingpins. They're not just one step away. So
California Congressman Adam Schiff took a visit to the U.S.-Mexico border, talking immigration and sewage in the ocean. The Los Angeles area Democrat toured the border area, stressed the need for changes, especially for asylum seekers. He met with immigration advocates Monday, talking about taking their concerns to Washington, D.C. Congressman Schiff also met with the mayor of Imperial Beach, who says the sewage leaking into the ocean is not only making swimmers there sick, but anyone breathing the air mixed with the ocean spray. Congressman Schiff didn't make any promises about progress on either issue, but did vow to work with D.C. lawmakers when he gets back to the Capitol. The new survey shows saying hello to your neighbors is linked to a higher feeling of well-being. You say hello to your neighbors? I don't know.
I say hello to everybody. I'm very friendly that way. But
Don't
Courtney is not. Courtney does not say hello, and yeah. I'm very social, but
well, you know what happens when you say hello? You get involved in a conversation with people, right?
No, not always. I find that sometimes I get the side eye.
You get the side eye, like, who are you? What do you want? Okay, well, according to Gallup, American adults who regularly greet more than one neighbor have a better feeling of well-being than those who don't say hello or just greet only one neighbor. Older Americans and those with higher incomes tend to greet their neighbors more often. On average, the poll says Americans report greeting 5 neighbors. Over a quarter say hello to 6 or more. Friendly people.
Yeah.
Morning. How you doing this morning? I like talking to people out there. I don't know. Beyonce is giving Lizzo now a shout out at her concerts again. Lizzo's been accused of some things by former staffers, berating people and I think sexual harassment type of stuff. And so for a time, there was a song that Beyonce does. There is a song that she does where she gives credit to other people that she finds inspirational. Well, she stopped putting Lizzo's name in, and it was a big to-do. But Beyonce apparently is now shouting Lizzo's name again, saying, "Lizzo, I love you, Lizzo," during her performance of Break My Soul. It happened at the Atlanta stop of her Renaissance World Tour Monday night. It came after she appeared to drop Lizzo's name from the song earlier in the tour after Lizzo was hit with this lawsuit from 3 former dancers. So
yeah, now she's oversteering the other way. So
Lizzo's back on the good list again.
Yeah.
I don't know. This report, I will tell you, is sponsored by the amazing people at Coachella Valley Coffee. And we have an exclusive deal where you can get 10% off. All you have to do when you go to order your coffee, Coachella Valley Coffee, you can see it on the screen. And then when you check out, just use
CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Yeah, you got to go to the website.
CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Yes. And then it's Mark T. You get the 10% off. And I think, Mark, you have oodles and oodles of positive messages from viewers.
I do. People who have tried this coffee, who've never had it before, go, "This is the best coffee I've ever tasted." Mark, you're so right. I can't believe it. This is terrific. Thank you so much for turning us on to Coachella Valley Coffee. I have tons of it. So I really think you'll love it. And there are all kinds of different coffees with different flavor notes. So check it out. Get whatever you want on the website, and then check out Mark T. For 10% off. It's not just coffee. They have teas. They have other stuff. So you'll really love it. And it's all sustainable. They deal with a lot of female-owned farmers. And I just everything about Coachella Valley is great from the standpoint of where their head is. But if it wasn't amazing coffee, I wouldn't recommend it to you. It is the best coffee I've ever tasted. Again, CoachellaValley.com and Mark T at checkout for 10% off.
When the box arrives and you open it, it's the fresh smell is the coffee smell, so good. Even though I don't drink coffee, it's so good, so good. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is indeed The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I don't want to wait any further. I've got a Pulitzer Prize winner very patiently waiting. He is the best-selling author and a Trumpologist. lectures around the world on law and on government, and he's written books on same. I actually just cracked. I've read David Cay Johnston's stuff for years, okay? So I've got his books, and I just cracked one of them last night just because I love reading about some. This was The Making of Donald Trump is what I was reading last night. Just some of the stuff that Trump has done in the past. And it does, I think, inform some of the case that he's dealing with in Georgia, too, because he really has always operated like a mobster. And the guy who is, again, the expert on Trump is with us now. David Cay Johnston. Hi, David.
Hello, Mark.
David, this racketeering charge, I guess this is the stuff that they do go after mobsters with typically. And I wonder if you can speak to the specifics here and why it might be an effective way to go after Donald Trump and his minions.
Well, Donald Trump's a white-collar mobster and always has been. RICO statutes were originally the idea of Robert Blakey, a Notre Dame University law professor and former federal prosecutor whom I know well. And the idea was, what do you do when you have what appears to be a business, but it's really a criminal enterprise? That was what he approached. And that's how he went after mob folks. Now, the Georgia RICO statute provides that the enterprise doesn't have to be a business. The enterprise can be overthrowing the government or overturning the results of the Georgia election. And there are lots of specific details in this indictment. The law requires only showing 2 predicate acts, that is, 2 acts to further the RICO operation, and there's a whole bunch of them in this indictment, which to Donald I think is a very dangerous indictment, because if he or someone friendly to him gets back to the White House and he is convicted, they can't pardon him out of this. The governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, has no power to pardon, although 2 things may happen, Mark. The Republicans could give Governor Kemp the power to pardon, specifically to help Donald. And
how would that happen, David?
Oh, they just pass a law that grants the governor pardon authority.
You're saying the legislature in Georgia would do that?
That's correct.
Okay, just
state legislature in Georgia, which is controlled by Republicans, and Brian Kemp is a Republican. I don't think Kemp would welcome a law like that, based on the fact that he's tried to separate himself from Donald. Secondly, effective October 1st, there's a law that would allow the removal of prosecutors in Georgia for any reason, as we've seen Ron DeSantis do with prosecutors in Florida. Fani Willis is an elected prosecutor. She was chosen by the people of her jurisdiction. Now, it's not as simple as the law takes effect and they can remove her. There's supposed to be the appointment of a committee. Members haven't been appointed yet. The governor and others have to appoint them. But between now and when proceedings with Trump would be wound up, there's enough time for them to remove her. And the Republicans may well do that. I mean, they are desperate in many places to protect Donald Trump from accountability for his own conduct.
Yeah, it's funny. I mentioned that second scenario last hour. But boy, when you say that Republicans may do that, it scares me. But this is sort of the 0 hour. They kind of have to do whatever, it's break the glass, pull the lever time, right?
Right. Well, yes, unless, you're willing to say that you actually believe in the things that Republicans have been saying for years. They believe in accountability. They believe in a law and order. It's very bizarre that the people who say, if I get to Washington, I'm going to defund the FBI, I'm going to tear the Justice Department apart, those are all Republicans. Now, there have been a few fringe Democrats like Maxine Waters,
Maxine Waters,
LA congressman who I knew a little when I was at the LA Times, who have made some, rather outrageous sort of statements, but they're not part of the leadership. They're in the fringe.
There are a lot of people who have an axe to grind with the Justice Department when it swings around to them, and sometimes those axes are, legit grinders. But I think you're right. The irony is so incredibly loud when it comes to the GOP. The other thing I saw, just speaking of stuff that's just bizarro, I saw Lindsey Graham, doing his Lindsey Graham dance on Fox News or one of these right-wing outlets in which he was saying, this should be settled at the ballot box. This isn't something that should be settled in a courtroom. That's why we have elections. I'm thinking, dude, that's why we're in the courtroom, because you guys overthrew the last election or tried to. I mean, it's like, it's so rich.
And Lindsey Graham, who is a former military officer, he was in the Judge Advocate Corps, is a lawyer. He knows better than this. Grand juries are composed of ordinary citizens. They're presented with evidence. Clearly, a great deal of time was put in by this grand jury and by the earlier investigative grand jury. A lot of witnesses testified. And the assertion that this is just nonsense made up out of nowhere that Trump and a number of his allies are making is ridiculous. But if Donald is absolutely innocent, as he intends, he contends, he says, I've done absolutely nothing wrong, everything is perfect. Well, he should be eager to go to trial. He should be, hey, I want to get in the courtroom right now because we're going to show that they don't have a case. And he knows perfectly well they have an incredibly strong case. That's why he wants to delay, but more importantly, if he can, stop or vitiate through something like a pardon power, any effort to hold him accountable.
Vitiate's a ding word. I want to show the post that actually speaks to what David's talking about from Donald Trump on Truth Social. Tony, you have that up? This is a large, complex, detailed, but irrefutable report on the presidential election fraud, which took place in Georgia, is almost complete and will be presented by me at a major news conference at 11 a.m. on Monday of next week in Bedminster, New Jersey. It's a short commute for him then. Based on the results of this conclusive report, conclusives in capital letters, David, all charges should be dropped against me and others. There will be a complete exoneration in capital letters. They never went after those that rigged the election. They only went after those that fought to find the riggers. Now, as we were saying, David, he's always next week I'm going to come through with my health care plan. You're not going to believe how great it is.
Infrastructure week.
Infrastructure plan, right. And now this large, complex, detailed report on election fraud.
Right. I tweeted about this earlier today. I'm not holding my breath. And of course, what Donald thinks is an exoneration is the kind of nonsense that, you'll hear from people like Tucker Carlson and the folks at Breitbart who just make things up or when it's possible, pretzel the facts. But, we'll see. If he's got it on Monday, then let's see what it is. But, having 35 plus years of history with Donald.
Exactly. So I guess he's got, who's writing that? Maybe if he can get Bannon on the phone, he would probably put together the rogues gallery of those who might write something.
Donald certainly will not be writing it.
I know it's early, but can you handicap what's going to happen and the timing and what I really feel I wanted you on, not just for the legal side, but because the political side is such a big part of this. I wanted you to speak to that as well.
Well, I don't think Donald is doing as well as some of the polls suggest. His crowds have been shriveling, and at DC Report, we sent journalists to several of three, I guess, of his rallies, 3 or 4, and showed that the rallies crowds in 2020 had diminished significantly. His most recent rallies, there have been lots and lots of empty seats. Trump makes sure that the TV cameras are only allowed to shoot in a certain direction. So you have to be clever about how to get pictures in the back of the room. And we came up with a technique for doing that to show there are all these empty seats everywhere. His fundraising gets a surge every time he's indicted, but it's not overall growing left and right. And I think a lot of the support you're hearing for Trump is very soft. And as more and more evidence comes out, you're never going to get the true blue Trumpers who believe that he is God incarnate or something close to it sent to save us. But people who have an actual brain in their head and some critical thinking skills are going to more and more separate themselves from Trump. And particularly with the issue of, do I want a president whose presidency is all about his grievances personally, or do I want to get the country going in a direction, which could be a different direction than where we're going? But, Donald didn't put us in any new direction when he was there, except for things that he did not say he was going to do. $28 billion of welfare for farmers in the Midwest, who would have been better off if he hadn't engaged in his absolutely mindless tariff policies, borrowing money, 2.5, actually closer to 3 trillion now over the next 10 years to give the richest people in America and the biggest corporations tax cuts. Not you and me, we got crumbs. But to provide them to people who have absolutely no need for more revenue. And by borrowing money. So I think that we will see over time Donald's position will weaken. What the Republicans haven't managed to do is come up with a credible alternative to him. It's certainly not going to be Will Hurd or Nikki Haley, if for no other reason than many Republicans want to make America white again. That's part of the reason Trump appeals to them.
So Vivek Ramaswamy, who has risen in the polls, he is like, I think he's Trump plus, actually. I mean, he's really, he wants to send troops to the southern border and all this kind of thing. He says all that stuff, and he speaks so well, and he always says, I'm data-driven, fact-driven, and then he just blows smoke. You think that his race may keep him out of the GOP?
Absolutely. I mean, he'll get some numbers that are in support for him because of the things he's saying. But, Will Hurd, the former Texas congressman who's been calling out Trump and is a Republican, he's black. Nikki Haley's parents came from India. The other gentleman whose last name I sadly haven't learned how to pronounce.
Yeah, Vivek. Just say Vivek. You're Ramaswamy, yeah.
Yeah, he's from the Indian subcontinent historically.
And Tim Scott, too,
Yeah, and Tim Scott is black. I mean, the Republicans have a real fundamental problem, and that is the demographics of the country have changed. This is not 1950s America. This is not before the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the LGBTQ movement. And they just haven't adapted to that. And, it was one of my best friends, a guy I have lunch with every month, always says to me when this comes up, he goes, they can't change. It's who they are. And if they can't change, then they're destined to be a minority party. And that's not a good prospect going forward. You really don't want to live in a country where one party is dominant all over the place. You want to have a competition of ideas. And having that competition of ideas forces both parties to be more rigorous in what they do. I mean, one of the things I've written about is that shown arguments made by Republicans that don't have any heft to them, and how that's allowed Democrats to push things that are, I think, flabby and not well thought through, and would be much better if they had to rigorously debate these things.
That's such a good point. And sadly, I feel like we've drifted from that. I mean, we're farther away from that now than we might have been, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. We don't debate policy. In fact, even this Trump thing isn't about policy. I mean, they throw... that's why I was talking before about the immigration problem. It just is now used as a prop almost. Neither party is really going to see it through to some kind of feasible strategy of conclusion.
Yeah, the really sad thing you can show with the Republicans in terms of policy is that 33 U.S. senators, including Ted Cruz, signed a letter saying, please give special prosecutor status to David Weiss, the Trump-appointed U.S. attorney in Delaware, so that his jurisdiction to examine crimes by Hunter Biden is not limited to crimes committed in Delaware, but to crimes he may have committed in California and other jurisdictions. And then they got it. And what was their response? You've seen them all on TV. Oh, this is part of the cover-up. It's part of the Biden crime family cover-up. You got to have some consistency to what you're doing. Now, I've taken the position all the way along. If Joe Biden is in fact been on the take, let's see the evidence and let's pursue him. The Republicans haven't come up with anything. One of their witnesses, the guy who disappeared on them, turns out to be a Chinese agent. And the second guy, the one who testified behind closed doors, and almost none of the committee members came to that meeting. What does the transcript show? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So
Yeah, they had 5 years with the same guy, and you're so right. They asked for that specific guy, and now they're talking about the fact that that guy is a puppet. He's weak. He's, it's so.
And this goes back in time, Mark. I mean, Benghazi. Bring up Benghazi, and then you ask people who will cite that. Well, what exactly happened there? They don't have a clue. You ask them, well, how would the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, tell the military not to send jet fighters? And by the way, how would a jet fighter plane help a man inside a burning building surrounded by a mob? Jet fighters can't suddenly stop like a helicopter and pick you up. And by the way, there was U.S. military in another part of the country who wanted to come to the rescue, and the Libyans prevented them from doing so. It had nothing to do with the rioters in Benghazi. It had to do with, it's our sovereign territory. You don't have any right to be here. The Republicans have learned that if they can get some word or phrase associated with bad, there's a huge part of the public that will parrot that. And the people who will do that are either not interested in the facts or they don't have the critical skills to do so. And to that, one last point, I think it's incredibly important to understand what's gone wrong with our politics, that 54% of Americans read at the level of a sixth grader, a 12-year-old or below, and 1 in 5 at the level of an 8-year-old, a third grader or below. And I don't care how smart you were, when you're 12 years old, you don't have critical thinking skills. And if you can't read at the level of a college student or at least a high school graduate, you can't critically understand issues that aren't really simple.
No, and that's why the dumbing down of everything is so effective. This is a little off point, but I wondered if you can maybe, in our last few minutes here, James Watson said, would love to hear how David Cay Johnston sees our politics going when AI is fully deployed and the truth is very hard for anyone to discern.
James, I think this is an enormous problem that we haven't begun to grapple with. I've been thinking a lot about what's going to happen with my law students at Syracuse University who have to write a paper. It's half their grade. I'm trying to think of strategies to make sure that they actually did the papers and they didn't use artificial intelligence. There are, in the early days of this, some signs that you can see. For example, there's a photo that's been all over the internet supposedly showing Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump on a sofa surrounded by a bunch of what look to be teen girls. But if you look at it closely, you'll notice Epstein has no legs. It's a fabrication. But, when we had chemical film, it was pretty easy to tell if a photo was doctored. With digital film, it's much harder. It's possible to do it, but much harder. Now that we have this artificial intelligence, it's very concerning. And remember, the artificial intelligence texts depend on large language models. That is, they scoop up things that are written all over the place. And so there's no creativity in that. There's no new thoughts and insights. It's only bringing back to you in a new format things that are already out there. Well, that's not how human beings advance. I mean, if that was the case, let's go back and stick to the text from Athens, Attica, to those who study this, from 2,500 years ago.
Yeah, it's so true. By the way, I think there are now, like some kind of spy versus spy, ways to figure out if something is largely AI generated. I'm sure as a professor will look into that. But yeah,
there'll be tools to try and uncover this stuff.
Yeah,
there are tools now to look for plagiarism, but none of them are perfect. But the danger to me, in my mind, is in the case of students. If you're paying, as my students are, $72,000 a year in tuition, I mean, you get discounts and all that, but that's the posted price for an education. If you're having artificial intelligence write your paper, what a waste. You're not learning anything. And the object of a college education is not to learn specific facts unless you're in certain fields where that matters, engineering, for example. It is to show that you can absorb a large amount of material from many disciplines, undertake a very complex multi-year project and successfully complete it. And if you're not doing the work, you're not getting the benefit from it.
Yeah.
It's not the paper that matters. It's the education you get.
Sure. Of course, that's so true. It's a real challenge for academics, but it's a challenge, as James said, for politics, and what's real and what's not. And you're right. This frontier is something that we're just beginning to understand, and it is way ahead of our ability to regulate it or even really understand it. So.
Regulation, I teach my students, always has to follow experience. Nobody would have imagined aviation law and air traffic control 500 years ago. Somebody had to figure out how to turn bauxite rocks into aluminum tubes and ancient ferns into jet fuel to send us flying through the sky before anybody thought of aviation law. So we're going to have to go through a period where there'll be lots of disasters, problems, conflicts, mistakes, careers ruined, careers get promoted ahead, until we have enough experience for the law to catch up with that. The law always follows.
So we're so far behind. I'll just ask you this very quickly. You mentioned the law. Handicap this latest thing for us. 19 indictments. It's a massive case. RICO, you've explained that part. But how do you handicap it, though? What's going to happen? What's the timeline, short-term, long-term?
So long as the judge is not removed from the case, then I think Trump is highly likely to be convicted in this case. He also is highly likely to end up risking being remanded, that is, held in custody, because Georgia has a law that's very tough on bail. It's a racist law on its face, but it may turn up to be damaging to Donald. I also expect that a number of the 18 Confederates are going with their lawyers to go in and try to turn state's evidence, a phrase, by the way, I don't hear in the news anymore, but to cooperate with the prosecution. Some of them are going to be told, sorry, you should have come in earlier, we don't need you anymore. But there no doubt are some people who could be incredibly valuable, and the number one person would be Mark Meadows, who you'll notice wasn't named an unindicted co-conspirator in the federal January 6th case, indicating he probably has been cooperating with prosecutors. And I'd say that he'd be probably the first person to come in and try to make a proffer, an offer of here's what I would testify to get himself out from under that case.
That would be huge, really huge. All right. Well, we'll check in with you again next week, David. So kind. Really enjoy our time together. David Cay Johnston, everybody. Right on. Right on. Yeah.
Do you feel it? It's the Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Feels great, baby.
It's unbelievably offensive.
Ralph Nader just sent me a book. Did he send you one too?
What he's got going here is a situation.
Put up your pants, my man. Pull up those pants.
You cannot say you love your country.
Let me kick down the door and talk to my stupid sons and daughters.
Don't make us beg. Subscribe, like, and share. The Mark Thompson Show.
Why are you yelling?
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal.
What's a guilty pleasure you about?
Where are my weed smokers at?
Yeah, what up, everybody? Glad you could be with us. It is our last half hour. We're here 2 hours every day, Monday through Friday. You can find us on YouTube and also across major podcast platforms. Thanks to everybody who has given us a thumbs up. That's always helpful. Smash it like a boss.
With your iron rod.
And thanks to everybody who participates in the chat. I think there is a poll up. Tony, is there a poll up in the chat?
Thanks, Tony. I can put it up right now.
Okay, what is the question that we're going to be asking? It's about, because I got an email about Mark. I thought you were going to. Let me just try to find the email. Mark,
I've received a lot of positive letters.
Yeah, I thought you were going to talk about your morning show appearance. Yeah. We just had all this news.
I have to say, the Mark Thompson show has not disappointed. You have come out just like gangbusters. I've loved every minute of it.
Oh, cool. Thank you, Kim. Well, we really hustle to try to give you good content and good takes on things. So thank you for noticing that. I did get a couple of emails. And by the way, if you want to reach us on the show, I got an email about the fact that we don't have an email address that we post all the time. So I blame, can't blame myself. I'll blame Tony. Yeah, there you go. Tony, could you post the email address? It's themarkthompsonshow at gmail.com. It's very easy to remember, but if you don't know it, then you go on a treasure hunt for it. So themarkthompsonshow at gmail.com. Anyway, I've received a couple of emails about the fact that I thought you were going to do a, where is it? On your morning show appearance. Why? Yeah, how come you haven't talked about it? You said you were going to show it. How come you didn't? Okay, all right.
A self-air check. All right.
Yeah, well, it's a cover-up. My God. How come you said you were going to do it and you didn't?
We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
So the answer is we just got busy with other stuff, but you can find us at themarkthompsonshow.com. That is the gateway to Patreon and PayPal. So that's what the website is, themarkthompsonshow.com. You got to put the in. Otherwise, you end up at a Christian ventriloquist site, which is a very strong move. And I wouldn't be bothered particularly if you ended up there and never came to our site. If that's where, that's your thing. But themarkthompsonshow.com takes you to our website. And there you can go to Patreon or PayPal. And are we going to put the email address up there too, Kim? That's your department.
It is up there. It is.
Oh, it is. Okay, the email address is up there.
So if you look at it, it's themarkthompsonshow.com, or it says, and email us at.
No. On the website, themarkthompsonshow.com. Well,
Kim, how are you?
Okay,
we'll put it on the
all
website,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll put it on the website too. So, and then you can reach us with whatever. Yeah, these things take a minute. And by the way, okay, all right. It takes a minute, okay? Yes. So we will take care of everybody who's trying to reach us that way. Now, we have a fork in the road, but I'm curious as to what is the vote. Do people want to, it's a total digression, a total palate cleanser. These shows have been spectacular, and having Jim and the Davids has been great. Yeah, the Davids were really good. Thank you, Dillette. Yeah. Love that name, Dillette.
I know,
it's a very cool name. Great timing having David Cay Johnston on today. I agree, Surface Spins. Very true. What are they saying in the chat? I'll do the
90%,
a little bit of the morning.
Yes.
90% want to look at the morning show thing?
Yeah,
okay.
90%.
Okay. So, Kim,
I'm bumped again, huh?
Would you want to do a little news capsule, and then I can do the KTLA thing? I don't have to do it right now.
Sure, yeah, I'll be quick about it.
Let's do a news capsule. I just invented that term. I love it.
Smash it with your iron rod.
I don't think I invented the term, but it's never been used on this show
into a little
before.
pill? Okay, we'll do it.
It's a way of meaning a nutritious morsel, I think is what we're looking
at.
How
are you? It's easy to swallow. It's the news capsule.
All right. News capsule, and then we will rotisserie me on my KTLA morning show appearance. Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. Former President Trump facing criminal conspiracy charges in Georgia related to his efforts to allegedly overturn the state's 2020 election results. The Fulton County District Attorney, I say Fani Willis. Mark, are you saying Fani?
I was saying Fani, and then I heard pundits say Fani. And now here's what I think. I think it's probably Fanny, but most of the pundits want to make it sound kind of like, so they, the elite media.
Yeah.
They go with Fani.
I heard David Cay Johnston say Fani, and you said Fani. So
I'm going to say Fani, and I'm going to say that Trump is going to turn it into what? It's very guessable. What is Trump going to end up calling Fani or Fani Willis, who's bringing this big case against him? There's only one guess. If you guessed Fani Willis, that's what he's going to be talking. Yeah, that's right. Fani Willis. But it's actually, I don't know whether it's Fanny or Fani. I'm going to say Fani for now, just to make it, give it a kind of a patina of sophistication.
I'll investigate. Fani Willis said Trump has until noon Eastern time next Friday to voluntarily surrender after he was indicted. This is a 97-page indictment. It is a thing of glory. It includes 41 felony counts. They detail an alleged conspiracy to pressure local officials, make false statements about electoral fraud to state legislatures, harass election workers, solicit Justice Department officials, and then Vice President Mike Pence. It also alleges an attempt to unlawfully breach election equipment in Georgia and elsewhere. And it includes a list of actions by Trump and his associates that allegedly were all attempts to advance this conspiracy. So what are the people of Georgia hearing from their state leaders about all this? Well, Governor Brian Kemp is responding not to the indictments, but to former President Trump's promise to deliver evidence that the 2020 election was stolen in Georgia. Governor Kemp said no one has been able to prove there was fraud in a court of law. He said elections in Georgia are secure, accessible, and fair, and will continue to be. Meanwhile, the Lieutenant Governor, Jeff Duncan, who testified before the grand jury, also said the election was fair and legal, adding that he hopes this is a moment in time and that Georgians will be able to move past it. President Biden pledging full federal assistance to help Hawaii recover from these devastating wildfires. He was speaking in Milwaukee today. President Biden said he plans to visit Hawaii as soon as he can without getting in the way of any search efforts there. At least 99 people were killed. Hundreds more are missing in the wildfires that broke out last week. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says efforts to bring home Americans detained in Iran are not linked to nuclear talks. Blinken told reporters nothing about America's overall approach to Iran has changed as the administration pushes Iran to roll back advancements to its nuclear weapons program. As the new school year begins, just about every campus in California has at least one substitute teacher holding down a class. State Superintendent of Education Tony Thurmond hosted a summit yesterday to address solutions, including trying to figure out how to inspire kids to want to become teachers. He said he's also establishing a statewide teacher recruitment coalition to address the teacher shortage. YouTube updating its medical misinformation guidelines and removing content the company says promotes harmful or ineffective cancer treatments or discourages viewers from getting professional medical help. Policy goes into effect today. YouTube plans to promote cancer-related content from authoritative sources like the Mayo Clinic. During the pandemic, the platform removed more than 1 million videos that it deemed as misinformation. Speaking of YouTube, for the first time ever, television accounts for less than half of Americans' viewing time. According to Nielsen, traditional cable and broadcast TV made up less than half of all TV watching at just 49.6% combined. On the other hand, streaming services like Netflix and YouTube grew to a record of nearly 40% of overall TV watching. We're in the right place, Mark Thompson.
Yeah. We're on the cutting edge.
We're on the cutting edge.
I'll say we're on the cutting edge. Yeah.
Doing it live. These Americans, silly Americans, what are you doing? Lastly, the operator of the Eiffel Tower says 2 drunk American tourists were found sleeping in the monument before it opened Monday. Officials say the guards discovered the pair as they made their rounds. I thought that was going to
be worse than it was, actually. When you said drunk American, like, what did we do at the Eiffel Tower? Spray paint something? Or
what have we done?
Something?
Nah, they just sleep in there. The security found them before the landmark opened in the morning. They were found, though, in an area normally closed to the public between the tower's 2nd and 3rd floor. The European news agency, AFP, is reporting that Paris prosecutors, I guess it's illegal to sleep at the Eiffel Tower, said the tourists appear to have gotten stuck because of how drunk they were.
Oh.
Come on, sauced Americans.
It's an odd excuse.
Police said the Americans bought tickets to enter the tower just before 11 p.m. Sunday, then jumped over security barriers as they came down from the top. The men were questioned at a Paris police
Wild
station.
idea, but it just might work.
Man.
Eiffel Tower operators filing a criminal complaint.
Good.
Come on. I mean, this is how we look in other countries.
I
People,
know
you're
it.
giving us a bad name.
Don't get it, do you?
You don't. Yeah, you're supposed to be all of us are ambassadors to other countries when we visit.
Here come the drunken Americans again.
There's a reason that this place is fun.
Yeah.
Hopped up on the booze. Here they come.
I'd be willing to bet my
lunch that there's thank you.
alcohol
Yeah, you had to run that. Thank you.
Their tennis shoes and their baseball hats and their beer.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
This report is crowdfunded, which means we rely on you. You can find us at themarkthompsonshow.com. That is where you will find the Patreon link and the PayPal link. And, of course, the Super Chat is live here on the show. I'm Kim McAllister. This is your news capsule on The Mark Thompson Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Shadow Stevens. This is The Mark Thompson Show. Keep it to yourself.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Yeah, what up, everybody? It's our last few minutes. We put a poll up. I was kind of hoping that I would be voted in such a way to let me off the hook on my
80-20 now.
80-20. So 20% of the people don't want to see my morning show appearance. I would be part of that 20%. I don't want to see it. But the rest of the crowd, 80%, would like me to do a little post-mortem on it. Kim,
how are you?
And Tony. Tony, you've seen it once because you had to kind of download it. Do you think it's worth showing, or what do you think?
We could just kind of
let's try to skim it. We're not going to show the whole thing.
No.
All right, let's roll it. We'll roll the beginning. Tony and I are kind of on the same page, but here it is. This is last week on Channel 5. This is the #1 morning show in Los Angeles. Now, I do want to say this. One of the things you have to do is you have to kind of understand the room. Like, what is your goal? Like, my goal is to get more people to know about this show, right? And so I have to be strategic about it. I can't go in there with like a jacket that's got a bunch of patches that say The Mark Thompson Show on it.
You should.
But, yeah, that actually isn't a bad idea.
A light up like frame, just put it.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Okay, so I should do that next time. But,
yes.
But I guess I want to be entertaining, but I also want to play the moment. I sort of didn't overthink it, but maybe I didn't think about it enough. Let's take a look. Go ahead.
All righty, switching gears here. When he's not on KFI AM 640, hanging with Tim Conway Jr., often filling in other shows, he hosts his own daily show on YouTube. While he's on vacation, we're beginning a new series. It's called Frank Buckley's Friends. Mark Thompson is part of that.
Now, Frank is their anchor.
List. We'll get to all that, but in the tease tape, we showed you over at Channel 11 with Lauren Sanchez.
Sure.
So have you remained close to her?
Well, I've tried not to
now,
be
Lauren Sanchez is
sycophantic kiss up all the time.
Jeff Bezos.
By the way,
we should remind people that she is Jeff Bezos'
that's the thing. And I think a lot of people are sort of circling the super yacht. Right? And so I didn't want to be one of those people. But I put a picture up on Instagram of the two of us because we hosted a show together called That's So Hollywood. I'm sure you guys remember it was on.
Of course. That was a good show.
Really big quality 4-month run. And so there was a promo shoot, and I put that picture, I don't know, it was in my phone somehow, and I put it up, and she liked it. And I felt like, wow, this is how far I've fallen. I have to be excited that Lauren liked a photo of mine. You can tell she was a star back then.
Right.
Do you feel Jeff Bezos is stomping on your packages before we get to your door now?
That's right. Stop posting pictures of my woman.
Okay, stop it, Tony. So, I mean, I think so far it's okay. You know what I mean? I think he's, I haven't really had a chance to mention the show yet, but I don't think you want to lead with your plugs. You don't want to lead with what you're there to, like. You don't seem like it's one big infomercial. You're there to visit casually, and you know that they're going to get to it. And any good host will always get to, giving the person the plug for what they're doing, right? So I think, right, Kim? I don't really have any issues yet with anything that I've done.
No, you're personable. You're funny so far. It's good.
For your interacting with all them, you're just kind of laughing with all them. That illusion that you're all just kind of hanging out, that you all actually know each other and stuff.
Okay, so far,
what everyone thinks is newsrooms are like and what they think radio is like.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so we continue. Here we go.
The wedding, you could be the announcer at the wedding.
I would love to announce them. Let me say that right now. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd be happy to be the ladies and gentlemen guy for the Bezos wedding. Right. I went to Lauren's last wedding.
Oh, really?
And it was spectacular.
Hey, then you should be at the next one.
Well, she married I didn't think you could upgrade from a super agent in Hollywood, Patrick Weitzel. I went to, Hugh Jackman was there. Ben Affleck was there. Hugh Jackman sang 2 original songs.
You're kidding.
How is she going to top that with Bezos?
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, she will.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
I think that guy.
Stop right there. I think that was a funny line, actually, a funny comment. Yeah. Oh, she will. In the cross, it wasn't my line. It was the anchor. Okay, Jessica Holmes, her name. She was funny in that moment with she will. I thought that was clever. Hurry up and get to the part where Mark jumps up on the desk. Yeah. Okay, Tony, keep going. Sorry.
Beautiful Australian actress.
They both seem to have done well.
Yeah, right. That's so funny. All right. So our Frank Buckley theme.
So those glasses that are in front of me, I cannot find them. That's why I'm wearing these Clark Kent. I don't know what happened to them. Those glasses.
Did you leave them there?
I don't think I left them there. You can skip ahead. This is about their anchor and our visits with the anchor, so you can skip ahead.
It's a little uncomfortable, to be honest.
Go ahead. You can skip further.
Time for my Speedos. I cringe.
Yeah. So this is all about their anchor. So I don't think.
That's
okay. Here, this got to our mention. So go back, Tony. This is where I would
today, and we can mention it. That it gives you is terrific. The having to build an audience part is much harder. So it's great that I'm here today, and we can mention it. The Mark Thompson Show, but it's lost, to be honest, in a lot of other shows that get a lot of heat. We are building though, and the freedom is terrific. You don't have to worry about what you say particularly, but. I like to do a lot. Oh, there it is. And you can see it's a pretty downscale show. But I have big people on. That's Hiltzik, who's a Pulitzer Prize winner up in the upper right. That's
you got to have him on again.
Down there in the lower box. And we have a lot of Pulitzer Prize winners and major journalists in. And it's funny. It's serious. It's sort of news-centric, politically centric. But it's really going well. And we are growing audience. So I'm able to sustain a payroll for everybody who works there. So it's kind of cool. But it's it's homegrown for sure. I come here and I go, wow, I remember this with all the
Stop for a second. So, Tony, you see what I'm trying to do? Kim, do you get it? I'm trying to, and this is true. I mean, I'm not making anything up. I'm trying to both explain that we're homegrown, that we have, that we're really just, we're getting it together here. And at the same time, I want it to sound like we're doing well. That's why I mentioned, but we're able to, sustain a payroll because people want to be part of things that are going well, right? I think that's just generally the way it is. So I'm trying to, but I don't want to misrepresent it. So I go, hey, it's a kind of, it's a downscale, homegrown. I mean, you feel a radio show that's come to life on YouTube. So that was my effort there. You thought, I think I hit that more or less, right?
Yeah, I think that was well said, and I like that that there were 3 people shown there in the clip because it makes it look like things are happening here and we're busy and we got people in and out. This is great.
Yeah, we're busy. We're busy. All right, Tony. Sorry. Please continue. Sorry.
Camera here. Look at that.
Put a shiver down your spine or give you chills?
I look back wistfully at this. I do. It does bring back, So.
Well, but it's funny because I think of some people who quote unquote independent media. That's a big thing now, and some people who've had phenomenal success with it.
No, it's very true, and
So here, stop. This is where I feel I didn't answer this question well. He said independent media, and I didn't really know what to do with that. And so I answered him honestly, but as I recall, I don't really like my answer. Go ahead and run.
Success with it.
No, it's very true. And, if you can move into, I think, this sort of YouTube and independent media, the different platforms that exist, and you can use traditional legacy media to push your audience over there, I think that's the best way to do it. For me, I did it after I'd left Channel 11. So a little bit harder. And after I left the radio, I'm on KFI radio here with Tim Conway Jr. Of course, that's a great show and Tim has been so supportive of the show. So we've got a lot of listeners from KFI. But that's the best way to build an audience, I think. If you can get a couple of hits in legacy media to bring them over.
It's not, that's not wrong. Stop. That's not wrong.
Absolutely truth.
Yeah, I guess it's true. I guess it's really true.
However, everyone in the control booth right now is going, why'd we let this guy on? We don't want to push people over to the alternative forms. What is he saying?
Well, he mentioned it. Their host mentioned it. You know, that's where we are.
And like you just did your report earlier, talking about how much between TV viewing and YouTube viewing now, how that's
yeah, maybe you're right. It's not a bad answer, says Flo. Okay. All right. We'll finish up here. Here we go.
And, politics aside, you said you just took a simple trip to say hi to your folks in Washington.
No, this is about traveling the country. I don't know if
you just subscribe and never watch. That's fine.
Yeah, you got one more plug-in for the show, which is good right at the end.
This is the weird thing about...
So it's on YouTube. You simply type it in The Mark Thompson Show?
The Mark Thompson Show, yeah. Right. You can Google it or put it in YouTube. Yeah, The Mark Thompson Show. Subscribe. This is the weird thing about... see, viewers to the KTLA Morning News, you get credit for the viewers, right? In YouTube land, you get credit for subs, they call them. People who subscribe. Okay. So if you just subscribe and never watch, that's fine with me.
Subscribe.
Please do that, the Mark Thompson Show.
All right, from one Mark to another, Mark Kriske with the
Okay,
weather.
now, they had me do this on the way out, everybody. And believe me, I want to wrap this up here on this show. But they had me... because I was a weather guy many years ago, and so they had me go on with their weather guy.
That's
and
a good
my
idea.
thing on the weather, and I did this before. Now you see people do this, but I did it before. I was the first one in the country to do it. But now, of course, no one remembers that I was the first one. But I danced on the weather, like not when there was serious weather going on, but it started with, it was Los Angeles. There wasn't a lot going on. It's a pretty stable weather pattern. And that dancing became a viral thing. If you put in dancing weather, and now there are a bunch of people who do it, but in the early days, I was
you still show up. If you do a search, you're one of the first ones that still shows up.
No one does it like you, Mark Thompson.
All right. Anyway, that's why they asked me in these following 45 seconds or whatever to not only do the weather, but to dance. So go ahead.
I will probably have to mute this because of...
Oh, that's right.
music.
Never mind.
Music.
Yeah. We can't. We'll just mute it.
No,
Now they're going to turn on the light.
Yeah, so no music.
Yeah, turn the light. The light is actually on. He said, now let's turn on the lights. And he goes, oh, we have to walk out here. Oh, yeah, there are the lights. So there I am with him. He's great. Mark Kriske is a brilliant TV personality and weather guy in the morning. And that is my awkward white dude dance that I do there. Yeah.
You're good. You're good. I like your hands. I
have to tell you, and then he gave me the clicker. He said, go ahead and do it. And so I started. And then at the end of the segment, so then I do the weather. And then at the end of the segment, I just kind of throw to the break. He asked me to throw to the break.
Yeah.
But,
This is like Einstein and Pascal.
yeah, it was kind of a fun. I guess that music just keeps us from having
morning news in the history of morning newses continues.
Yeah, you got to stop it, Tony. We're going to get nailed.
Yeah, we're going to get busted.
It may be too late, but whatever.
It might be too late.
That's my treat to you all.
Yeah. Blah, blah,
so
blah,
I'll be demonetized today, but that's my treat to all of you, my loving audience.
I love where they stopped. That's great.
Yeah, but it was fun. They were great. They really are great, and they're such pros. And in the end, actually, I didn't think it was a bad appearance. And I usually really have a lot of bad to say. It just, I'll tell you, man, I don't know how they do it. They get up at that hour, they're on at 6 a.m. Some of those people have been there. I mean, some of the people have been there since like 2:30 in the morning. It's crazy. So I don't know how they do it. I'm glad I don't have to.
They do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
Exactly. But $4.99 from Luis. Come on, that's for my dancing. Got a quick $5 from Luis for my dancing. Thank you, Luis.
Big shout out. Yeah. It's like you're busking on a street corner with that dance. Beautiful.
Look at you. Did you block or ban somebody, Kim?
I did.
I'm not a blocker or banner. Hi, Pinky. Pinky,
big shout out.
$1 a day from the Pinkster. Thank you, Pink, for a super sticker. Always hits us with $1 a day. John Woodward, thank you.
Big shout out.
Appreciate the super stickers and super chats. Even if you're watching in delay, you can always hit us with that heart. It's got a $sign. Appreciate that. We're crowdfunded, so sadly I got to kind of swing around to that. A vote for Trump is a vote for civil war. A vote for Biden is a vote to have elections in 2028. I think there will be I mean, I don't mean to sign on to an extreme position like that. I mean, I don't get me wrong. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't typically make statements that seem like flamethrower type statements, and that's one of them. But I really do believe there's clear evidence that if you vote for Trump, and I think GOP candidates generally at this juncture, at this point, until they reconstitute that party, I'm not convinced that there won't be a seizing of power. And seizing power any way possible. And that would be the end of free and fair elections, as free and fair as they are in the U.S. You can argue voter suppression. You can talk about a lot of things wrong with the elections, and certainly wrong with the system of elections in the presidential election. The Electoral College is ridiculous. But I think it's a fair statement that a vote for Trump, should he be on the ballot, it looks like he will be, is a vote to overturn the kind of democracy or the representative democracy that we have. So again, hate to leave on a heavy note, but whoever put the comment up, yeah, I think that's a fair comment. Let me get back to the ban. Yeah, like the ban. Here you go. Who got banned? Wes wants to know. Me too, Wes. Who got banned? I wasn't looking at the chat. I was working. Who got banned?
Sayonara,
I mean, we want to know.
Listen to me. I don't want to hear you.
Kim banned somebody. Now, you know I'm not a banner or a but Kim has it's the velvet fist of Kim. And
so I'm
Kim,
how are you? Very protective of the chat family that we have.
I see. Yeah.
And the Mark Thompson Show community that that has developed over time. And I treat them with affection, and I want this to be a place where people can come and exchange ideas. But if you come here just to talk about one issue over and over and over and over again, and you're not participating in the conversation, out you go. Sayonara. Esther is checked out now.
She is very tough.
Good day, sir.
That's very tough. We Run San Jose throws us a 5. Thank you so much.
Big shout out.
Thanks for the great show as always. I wanted to contribute $5 for every felony Trump is being charged with, but I don't want to go bankrupt like him. I get what you did. Well, you know, there's never been anything like it.
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah, it's really true. Never heard of anything in our history.
There is nothing in our history that quite compares to this.
By the way, all kidding aside, there isn't anything in our history that quite compares to this.
Yeah.
This is an inflection moment in our history. We are living through it. It's not a good thing, but it is a thing. So the nothing burger people, and there's, it's all politically motivated. Come on, man. This is unreal what this last guy tried to do. And it's unreal how wide that net extended. And all the people, GOP leadership, all the way down to, ma and pa. We showed you the indictments in Michigan, they were just like store owners and stuff. One guy was 82 years old. He is 82. He's been indicted for being a fake elector. So when you look at the breadth of all of this, and you looked at the fact that a sitting president is trying to overturn the return of the result of the election, and you look at the fact that it was planned. Steve Bannon spoke about this ahead of time. This was the plan. They could see that they were likely to lose. And as a result, they had this plan to deny this election's legitimacy. So once you look at all this and you see, as I say, everybody involved and how they were involved, we've known about this through J6 and all the rest, and we've sort of followed along. But the indictment brings it into kind of a legal clarity and gives a legal framework for chasing it all down. And once you see that, it's historic. Not historic in a good way. I wish it weren't happening, but it is. So, while it is, we will bring it to light in all the ways we do. One of the ways we do is with Brother John Rothman, who will join us tomorrow. And he will weigh in on Trump and his minions, his co-conspirators, his alleged co-conspirators. By the way, when they say everyone's innocent until proven guilty, it is true. But let's face it, everyone's innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. That's for the court. You can make whatever judgment about someone you want. Or we go, well, he's innocent until proven guilty. No, he's innocent until proven guilty to the jury. If you're not on the jury, then you can make whatever determination you want. Let's face it. All right. The after party live is next.
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Who doesn't like an after party and who doesn't want it to be live?
Out of time. Bye-bye.
Go check it out. Until tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.